what is a really challenging assignment. So whatever the outcome, I want to say to all three of these women, I'm incredibly honored to be in your company, and I was thrilled to get to know you on the trail. And it's my pleasure to have you meet all of the people that were important in my race and are important to me in my life. When I exited the race, I had conversations with all three of these women, and I think the whole process of endorsements is sort of outdated. I don't think that who I vote for should be any dictate of what you should do. We should all do our homework because we are the hiring committee for this very important job. So we've got to put a little more energy and effort into who we hire, and that's what tonight is about. It's not about platitudes and stump speech. It's about asking these candidates real questions around the things that were important to me, and by extension to you, because you supported me in the campaign, and getting real answers and real conversation. Tonight's program will be introductions, and then I will ask 3 questions of all of the candidates. Then 2 questions for each of the candidates. The candidates do have the 3 questions I'm asking all of them in advance. They do not have the 2 questions I'm asking each of them, which are based on their platforms and positions individually. We'll have time to take questions from the audience, and then we'll leave with some next steps. And if we do this well, you should feel edutained, informed, and activated. So who's ready? Okay. All right. Awesome. A few housekeeping items. We are, let me see. Next up. Okay. We're building community, and in that community, we have a collective agreement. One is curiosity. Come open-minded and leave informed. Leave your biases and your preconceived notions at the door. Ask good questions, but don't take any digs. Community, we want to create a trust-based environment. There are no stupid questions. Everyone should feel safe, welcome, valued, and championed to ask their best and fullest questions. Please be active and engaged in the conversation. The candidates are putting their all in being here, and I'd love for you to put your all in being here. And then finally, to the candidates and to the folks around the room, communicate directly and with care. I'm asking the candidates to keep their answers to 90 seconds or less because we tune out after that. And if you ask a question, don't make it a compound one that's difficult to follow. Trish will give us a few hints from Heloise about the Zoom etiquette. Over to you, Trish.
Awesome, thank you. Yes. So you might notice we are muting folks upon entry. We ask that you stay on mute while others are talking. If you do have a question, the raised hand function is really beautiful. If you need to get someone's attention and you're finding it difficult, you can always send me a direct message in the chat, and I will make sure that your question is heard. We are going to be using the Q&A functionality as well eventually. And so if you're familiar with that, it should be in your Zoom toolbar at the bottom or top of your screen, depending on how you have it set up. And we also have some, nonverbal reaction stuff that you can use too. Get those emojis out, get popping in chat. We're excited.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Trish. So let's keep the chat flowing freely. And I think I see Barbara just joined or is trying to join, Trish. So maybe we can spotlight her in a second. Next up, let me introduce Barbara. First of all, Barbara, are you on?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, and we'll be able to see you in a second. Thank you for being here. You're just off the, are you just off the floor?
Well, we got out earlier, but I had 3 events tonight. Gosh.
She is stacked.
This is a plane in the morning,
Nice. Well, Barbara, thank you for being here. I'm giving the same sort of set of intros for each of you, just so we can get the basics out of the way. Born in Texas in 1946. You can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. Graduated from UC Berkeley in 1975, was a staff member for Congress before joining the Congress in 1998. Her district represents Oakland, Berkeley, Alameda. Some of you are from those areas. So your Congresswoman Lee is on the phone. She is on the Budget Committee and the Appropriations Committee. So she can tell us a lot about federal government spending. And a quote that I appreciated from Barbara that I feel tells a lot about her personally is, I've survived domestic violence, I've been homeless, I was a single mom, and I've always stood on the right side of history, even when I was standing alone. So welcome, Barbara.
Glad to be with you. Can you see me? I can see you, Lexi. You look beautiful. Can you hear me?
Oh, thank you. We're gonna, after I introduce everybody, then I'm gonna set up the questions and I'll go
Okay.
on and off slides. When
Okay.
when you're speaking, everybody will see you.
Okay, no, I'm fine. It's okay if no one sees me.
No.
You're spotlighted, Barbara. You're good. You're spotlighted.
Okay. All right, Christina Pascucci, you may not have known that Christina is in the running. And I will say from experience, when you haven't been in government and you enter a race like this, even if you are a famous newscaster, as Christina is, it is hard to get attention. And I could not be thrilled for her to be here. Born in 1985, double major from USC in IR and Spanish. She has been an incredible journalist, Fox 11, Emmy Award winner, licensed pilot, Spanish speaker, majorly involved in a bunch of nonprofits focused on women domestically and abroad. And as of December 23rd, so Christina, you can do the math for us, but as of December 23rd, you were 6.5 months pregnant, wanted to send out a shout out for mothers and working mothers, and your plan is to prioritize the backbone of our state, which is our small businesses. So
yes, I got about 4 weeks to go. I'm due the week after the election. So if she's on time, she has great timing.
and this is your first?
Yes.
Okay.
Little
All right.
girl.
Okay, mazel tov, man. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And Katie, who hopefully will be joining soon. Katie, is Katie on? Katie, born in 1974, Yale, Harvard for law school, was a law professor, staff at the AG's office, faculty of UC Irvine. She's been representing our 47th district since 2019. Her area includes a lot of beaches, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, among others. Katie shared, as a single mom to 3 school-age kids, I'm deeply invested in our state's future. We need more leaders in Washington who know what it's like to live, work, and raise a family in California today. And I know she is desperately trying to get home to her kids. So if her schedule gets in the way, we support that. So first questions are for all of you, or for the two of you, Barbara and Christina. And I want to give folks a civics lesson. And by the way, I think we should bring civics and home economics back into our public school education, because I'm pretty, I needed to go back to school on this, and I think many people have too. So 3 branches of the government, legislative, executive, and judicial, all serving citizens. There are a lot of people who lead companies on this call. So I want to draw an analogy for you. Businesses or nonprofits have customers and shareholders of some sort. That's like citizens. But if you are a wealthy donor, you are treated very differently than everybody else. Everybody votes, but if you donate money to the government, you're going to get much different, let's say, elite treatment. The foundation team is how I think of the legislative branch. They set the budget, they make the laws, and they pick really key positions. They can also take people out of key positions, including the presidency. The executive branch, the president, the vice president, and his 15 direct reports, effectively, who run departments, are like the operating team. And the judicial branch, or the Supreme Court, is like a lifetime appointed board of directors. Lifetime appointment, very difficult to take them off. That might be a crude analogy, but it gives you the general idea. The House is 435 people. This is what Congresswoman Lee and Porter are part of. Effectively directly responsible and responsive to the people. Partner to the Senate, which is 100 people. On the building of the Senate, it says the Senate is the living symbol of the union of our states. The union of our states. The executive branch takes a budget that ultimately gets approved by the House and the Senate and drives the work of the government. So it's a $6.5 trillion spending budget that gets allocated to the Secretary of Defense and everybody else. And we'll talk more about that later. So that's sort of what we're dealing with here. And so I emphasize that because people get frustrated by Congress. It's a pretty small organization, and there are 100 senators, 2 of whom are from California, and the contenders are here tonight. So what a lucky privilege do we all have in being able to ask them real questions. I think great leaders define reality and give hope. And Barbara and Christina, we're getting to you. If I were to define reality, I would say Congress is not meeting expectations. The Senate in particular. Why? Because if I gave them a 360-degree performance review and I said citizens are customers, 13% of customers or citizens approve of Congress, and the Supreme Court that the Senate installed has the lowest approval rating that they've had in decades. As shareholders, we have a $1.7 trillion deficit, and it's growing. And I think these numbers are so hard to hear, but it's basically like you make 75 grand as a family, you spend 100 grand, which means you owe 28 grand of credit card debt, and that's on top of the debt that you've already incurred. So to me, that's a business model that just doesn't make sense. And then finally, on peer reviews, there's no staff reviews that are public. But when I read about the administration's peers in the executive branch, the one that really stood out to me was Tim Wu, who's Biden's antitrust and tech representative, and he left because he was so disgruntled with not being able to pass any child protection laws, even though there's been 41 hearings. He said, I came to this job a little cynical about Congress. I'm now 10 times more cynical. It's a shameful institution in terms of representation of the American public. There are so many things that the American people want that Congress will not give them, and they're supposed to be a democratically accountable body. So again, if great leaders define reality and build a hopeful plan with real outcomes based on that reality, my first question, Barbara, for you, and then Christina, how do you rate the House and the Senate? Are they meeting, not meeting, or exceeding expectations? Barbara, I'll go to you first.
Not meeting.
Not meeting. Can you say more? Is there anything you would add to the 3 points that I kind of provided as to back up for that?
Well, I think, Lexi, and I'm really happy to be with you because the context, though, is we're in a democracy. And in a democracy, everyone has different points of views. And unfortunately, especially now, you can see what is taking place where people get dug in to their points of views and won't move. Mm-hmm. And so it's not a dynamic institution, which it should be in a democracy, but people are wedded, members are wedded to one point of view or another, and they stay there. And so it's not meeting the needs of the American people because we can't move anything forward. We can't move a budget forward. We can't move an appropriations bill forward. We can't, fight for people who are low income, people who are poor. The deficit, the deficit primarily is caused by the Trump era tax cuts that gave billionaires and corporations a heck of a lot more profits and left many people behind, low income people, working families, and middle income people. And so the deficit, yes, is what it is, but we've got to understand how it got to be that way. And so we can really begin to bring it down in a way that makes sense for everyone.
Yeah, okay, that sounds great. And I'm going to come back to you on the spending and the deficit. Trish, is there a way to blow up even bigger so that people can see just the speaker, or is that on their end?
I can do multi-pin. Here we go. Give me one sec. couple of people say that they're on spotlight, so they should be big on your screen. If you're having trouble, go ahead and go to the view button in your top right, and you should be able to see speaker view. And that can help if you had something that was reset by any chance.
Okay, great. So for others also, as you have questions or clarifications, you can put them in the chat and we'll moderate them as we go. But Christina, thank you, Barbara, for your response on that. So not meeting. Christina, how about you?
I would say not meeting, certainly. I mean, our politics are absolutely broken right now. You have 15% of people who say they do trust the government. That is a national security crisis. To me, we need to restore faith in our institutions, government, media included in that, and rebuild trust. I've traveled to more than 100 countries across 7 continents. I've been in war zones. I've interviewed world leaders, and I've seen increasingly that people are saying they're losing respect for America. We don't hold the position in the world that we once did. And that to me is very dangerous. And I say this as someone, I'm a native Californian, I'm born and raised here. I love this country. I love this state. And we have an abundance of resources, of natural beauty, of innovation and ingenuity, whether it's our aerospace industry or Silicon Valley or Silicon Beach here in Southern California. And we have so much potential, but we are standing in our own way. And so why I decided to run for United States Senate is because I am extremely worried about the future of this country if we don't have people who are willing to reach across the aisle, who are more moderate voices, who are willing to, just have dialogue, productive dialogue with the other side. I think we only have, a few more election cycles before California and America continue to go down a very dark path. So I believe in the promise of this country and state, and believe it's an extremely important time to bridge that gap, to reach across the aisle, to build consensus, and all work toward a common goal as Americans.
Okay, great. Good segue. So I want to get under that because I think it's easier said than done. So I'm not, these are not gotchas. This is just to give you the sort of level of granularity that I'm looking for. So my sort of core theory of change was that until and unless we solve people's personal and family security, we won't be able to get to where we're going, by which I mean invest in education and skilling so we have talent that's capable for the jobs of today and tomorrow, which is being radically disrupted. Make businesses accountable for humans as assets and carbon as costs so that they grow by virtue of the people also growing in their organization and the intended or the negative impacts on the planet being reduced. That makes companies more productive and it helps families, which increases the security of families. And my goal was, can the Senate and the executive branch in particular agree on an outcome, a metric that we're looking to drive? And I think productivity of the country and earnings of individuals growing together as opposed to separately, which they've been growing separately since the 70s. And if you were a libertarian, you would say, well, it doesn't matter. The economy is growing, but so is everybody else's earnings. But if you actually split out this red line and you looked at it by different brackets of income, you would see the bottom 3/5 of Americans are flat to declining in inflation adjusted earnings, which means that things are really bad for people. And therefore, nobody can be productive in their workforce if they're not actually being fulfilled at home. So I wanted that to show up with early indicators in people feeling better that the climate was going to survive planetary instability, that they would be personally safe in housing, in gun violence, in caregiving, healthcare, elder care, and childcare, and that they would feel more secure, that they could invest and be and know that they were passing the world better to their kids. So when I ask you, giving your definition that is shared with me, that our current Congress is not on a path to do those things, what do you feel is the one thing we should prioritize, and how will it show up for the people on this call and in California and the United States at large? Barbara, I'll start with you again first.
Well, I think we have to prioritize economic equality. In California, out of our 40 million residents, 20 million are living one paycheck away from poverty.
Mhm.
And Lexi, on the security, and that's a great paradigm diagram that you put forth. There are so many people who can't feel a sense of security. And in the Senate, my job would be to make sure that those who are hanging on the edge, the most vulnerable, have a pathway to up that pyramid. Because right now, people are commuting 2 and 3 hours a day to work. They're making maybe $16 to $20 an hour. Their rent is $3,000 a month. I mean, it's like, come on, where is the security there? Childcare costs, what tuition costs. And so for some in California, it's okay. The security, their economic security determines that they're secure across the board. They're free from a lot of the challenges that low-income people, poor people, people of color have to face. And so in the Senate, I want to equalize income. I want to equalize income in terms of closing the gap between the rich and the poor. And when the tax bill opens up, when the Trump tax cuts expire in 2025, I want to make sure that billionaires pay their fair share, because right now the tax code is such that middle income people are paying more taxes than billionaires. And so we have to have a level of security for everyone in California. And right now that gap is huge. So I want to be able to close that gap in the Senate for people who are living on the edge.
And Barbara, I'm sorry, I'm not saying, is it okay to not say Congresswoman Lee?
No, call me Barbara.
Okay, Barbara. It's a mouthful. What, in addition to tax billionaires, is your plan? Like, what would be the plan to create long-term equality? Or what are sort of like some core tenets that systematically would create more security?
Reducing the cost of housing, first of all. Making permanent the child tax credit, because during COVID, when we were able to make sure people had access to the child tax credit, we reduced childhood poverty by 40%, 50%.
Mm-hmm.
That would be one. Making sure that, again, housing costs, coming up with a housing plan that we need a national eviction protection plan to make sure that people aren't evicted just arbitrarily, which is happening now. And we need to make sure that we have my background is psychiatric social work. I have my MSW. Mental health is a big deal for me. Making sure mental health services are available for people, and making sure that we have, especially now in this transition to AI, this just transition, so that people and the green economy, making sure that in every single policy we have, that there are equity provisions for low-income people, for workers, for people of color, for people who could be right now I'm dealing with an issue, the last hired are the first fired in the tech sector, finding that the majority of people now who are being laid off are Black and women, Black African Americans and women. And so basically coming up with strategies to help California become more affordable, which means federal investments in childcare and in housing and in cleaning up frontline communities, and in making sure that mental health services and healthcare is available for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, great. And Christina, maybe +1 to any of that you are agreeing with, and add anything that you either don't agree with or would add to what Barbara said.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of clearly, she has had decades in Congress, and there's a lot that I agree with in there, including the permanent child tax credit, more housing. There's so many regulations that are preventing affordable housing right now. I think we need to cut some of those regulations. And where I really differ is that I think there's no economic security without economic activity. We really need to support our small businesses. Right now, they feel like they are struggling so much, especially in California. They're overtaxed, they're overregulated. I think we need to have tax cuts for the middle class. Our shrinking middle class is a problem for a thriving economy. And we have to look, I very much agree with her when it comes to mental health. It's personal to me. I have a family member who struggles with substance abuse and mental health issues. That's what pushed me into being a journalist in the first place, into wanting to tell people's stories and build that connection and compassion and understanding, and also understand what would happen if these mental health resources were available earlier on in a child's life. And that brings me to one of the things I'm most passionate about that I think bleeds into so many of these systemic issues we face, which is foster youth. They make up half the homeless population. 75% of those who are incarcerated were in the foster care system. So why would we not focus on that and look to rehaul that system on a federal level to make sure these kids are supported throughout their life with the mental health resources they need? When they transition out of foster care, they're supported as well. I think, if we just focus on that issue, we could solve so many of these other things that we face.
Okay, interesting. So there's something that I feel like, am I showing the right thing, Trish?
You are.
Okay, so what I hear what you guys are saying, but I guess I would say, like, I kind of think in systems. So let's take the system of how we're spending against our current priorities. And Barbara, I'm gonna trade it up, but I am gonna start with you because you have been dealing with this for a long time. This is our 2024 budget. It's so hard for laymen to understand. I have my kids on here. So Sajal and Scout, 14 and 11. Sajal's in 6th grade. And I wanted to try to explain our budget to a 6th grader. So this year, we will raise $4.9 trillion. That's 12 zeros. 50% will come from people's individual taxes. 34% will come from payroll taxes, 12% from corporate income taxes, 5% from other. Okay, that's a lot of money. How do we spend it? Well, we spend 6.5 trillion in what we call outlays. 60% of that is mandatory. It's already actually spent in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, previous obligations. Of what's remaining, 13% goes to defense, 14% goes to everything else. So we have a deficit. We spend more than we earn, which Sajal and Scout know they can never, ever do, of $1.6 trillion. I really want to go deep with somebody on the sustainability of this, but I actually want to focus on what that says about our priorities. So of our spend, 3% is on research and development, which is effectively like things we think science and technology can help with. 3%, very small amount. And that is almost entirely concentrated in 4 departments: defense, health, general science, and space. Little bit in energy, and then it falls off. So there's hardly anything that is being spent in researching the environment, agriculture, transportation, education. So my question to you is, okay, science and technology is clearly not a silver bullet for every problem we're serious about solving, though. It's likely that science and technology could help. Example, Zoom school during the pandemic, we had not invested in the infrastructure in our schools to be prepared to flip to a virtual environment, and we were playing catch up. Lots of reasons we should have and could have been in front of that, but not with that budget. So if the capability to leverage technology is concentrated in these 4 or 5 agencies, it suggests that we're not serious about using technology for education or for skilling or for affordable housing or reducing, Barbara, the thing you say you care about and I care about too is intergenerational poverty, things that help the bottom half of this country. So given you've given what you know, what would each of your first priority, number one priority be around technology over the next 6 years?
My number one priority, gosh, I think my number one priority would be for underrepresented populations in the tech sector, pathways into the great opportunities that exist. I have chaired for the Congressional Black Caucus since 2020, now it's Tech 2025, trying to create opportunities for specifically people of color and African Americans in the tech sector, because I know that that's the promise and that's the future, and that's where content is developed. That's where equity should be infused throughout every part, every aspect of technology. And so, of course, expanding broadband, all of what goes with that. But I think it's important to have issues for myself, racial equity, gender equity into the tech sector, so that everyone has an opportunity to benefit from the, well, more R&D that we need to put in, of course, but also benefit from the tech sector opportunities, and that's just not happening.
Okay, so pathways to and through high-tech jobs for people that may be blocked from them, and broadband access so people can have a shot at an equitable shot at accessing all the digital environment has to offer. Christina, how about you?
Well, my career as a journalist, nearly 20 years in the trenches, interviewing thousands of people, seeing the development of all these different issues that we're facing has really taught me the value of fighting for truth and against disinformation and misinformation. People are 70% more likely to share a fake story online. That is extremely dangerous. And also with the rise of AI, it just seems like there's this train coming at us and no one's paying attention. And AI, even the people who created it, said it is potentially the greatest threat humanity faces. I also believe it could be one of the greatest promises. It could, help cure cancer or a number of other things that can make our life so much better. But I really think we need to establish a regulatory agency for AI immediately with urgency, because it's exponentially advancing as each day goes by. And with that, we need to have global participation in it.
Okay. I'm going to send you something, Christina, after on what I called the Manhattan Project for AI. I think one agency, when AI is literally in everything, is tricky, but I'll send that after.
I'd like to see that also.
I'm adjusting to my role as interviewer, scintillating interviewer, not candidate.
Good word.
I am going to come back because there is a question about how you empower agencies to, actually, I think this is a good one, Barbara, follow up from what we were just talking about. How do you empower agencies with current technology infrastructure to increase their efficiency and reduce costs?
How do you, from a federal government, Senate space?
Yeah, maybe I'll lead the witness here to say it seems pretty unlikely that you could if you're only investing 3% of your budget in R&D, and the preponderance of that is focused on 3 agencies.
Yeah, well, technology should be part of every single agency. And when I saw that, I mean, you have some great teaching tools, Lexi, there. And when I saw that, because I sit on the Appropriations Committee, I'm on the subcommittee on Health and Human Services and Education, the subcommittee on Agriculture, and the subcommittee on State and Foreign Operations, which is our global non-defense related initiatives, and I'm the ranking member there. Now, and so empowering would be to increase the budgets in all these other agencies, of course, in R&D, and from an appropriators perch, you look at ag, for example, this is FDA comes under our jurisdiction on agriculture. A lot of people don't know that. And to see how little investment we make in agriculture when we have pharmaceuticals and medicines and prescription drugs under our jurisdiction, it's mind-boggling. And
Yeah.
so we definitely need to do more in R&D across the board. And I would, in the Senate, fight for that, because I truly believe in research and development. And also, and I'll just close by saying, computer science for all. President Obama introduced an initiative to make sure it was only 250 million for low-income students to be part of a curriculum, to have curriculum around computer science and technology. And I've been leading the charge on appropriations. We've only gotten maybe to about 100 million, but that's just an example of how little we invest in technology for young people. And so I would want to see a larger portion of R&D to support technology through all these agencies, but also more for our young people, to create that pipeline starting from preschool all the way through.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, whoever wins, you should hire my mom, who was a FERC commissioner, who asked that question, because she knows a lot about increasing efficiency and reducing costs. So let's go into the round where I'm going to ask you each separate questions. Now, again, Barbara, we're going to start with you, because our state really has failing marks on the things that you say you care about and I care about. In particular, and these are, I mean, we could go, for days on the statistics. I was really disappointed when Adam Schiff said, from the perspective of a Californian, how would you rate the economy? And he said 3. If one is the best and 10 is the worst, 3. And how can that be? I mean, we are 50th of 50. 50th of 50, bad. You don't want to be 50th of 50 in the states on economic opportunity, because our costs are 39% higher, driven by housing, which we have too little of, homelessness, which becomes much more near and present for people, given the costs of goods in California and the lack of housing, and safety issues. And in your district, they're reportedly worse over the last 10 years, just on those metrics alone: economic opportunity, costs, housing, and homelessness. So what are you going to do differently in the Senate that you haven't been able to do in Congress, that you think shows up in us moving to a respectable place on the lens of economic opportunity?
Sure. And being in the Senate, Lexi, being one of 100, you have a lot more leverage and much more power. And so in the Senate, I would want to, one, reduce the cost of living, make California more affordable. And that involves investments in, and right now with inflation and the cost of living, we have to get the federal government to step up and invest in, affordable housing, first of all. Land trusts, for example. We need to invest more in transit villages, which I've brought earmarks back, federally funded projects to, for instance, transit villages, where you have transportation, where you have environmentally sound green buildings, where you have restaurants and villages around that are hubs for economic opportunity and for small businesses. And so we have to be creative in how we invest our money, our tax dollars, but it's got to be a strategy around housing and making housing more affordable. Also, as I said earlier, childcare. Women especially can't get into the workforce in many respects because of childcare. So why can't we invest more, which we tried to do until 2 senators held it up, into what was Build Back Better, now the Inflation Reduction Act. We tried to put in a heck of a lot more investments into childcare and childcare operators. And these aren't lofty ideas. These are actual strategies that will work to make life more affordable for those 20 million people who are living one paycheck away from poverty. And we have to, we must do that. Food insecurity in the Central Valley is off the scale. Why can't we invest more in our ag sector to ensure that people have access to healthy foods? vertical farming initiatives. You know, there's strategies to make food less expensive and to help our small farmers in the Central Valley. Again, these aren't lofty ideas. These are ideas that can be done if in fact we have the commitment to take that on defense. I must say $870 billion now, where we know that 150 is in waste, fraud, and abuse. How about taking that 150 in waste, fraud, and abuse, cutting the military budget and investing in all of these examples, including another one on housing, a revolving fund, where right now in California, one of the primary reasons people cannot rent an apartment or a house to take care of their families, they can't afford the first and last month's rent and security deposit. That's $10,000 to $15,000. I'm working on my deposit bill right now that I want to take into the Senate, where we'd invest in HUD in a revolving fund. Again, these aren't lofty pie in the sky ideas. This is something HUD could do tomorrow and provide that security deposit and the first and last month's rent, so people would have the access to the resources to be able to rent a place, and then when they move, reimburse the revolving fund. So they're real practical strategies. As a former business owner, I know how to do this, Lexi, and I know good and well that in 6 years that some of these practical, bipartisan, which they should be, efforts could help reduce the cost of living and help California be more affordable for people who are living paycheck to paycheck on the edge.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just as a point of process, Barbara, I feel like with your long time in a lot of relationships, it just feels like there's no other business you can run where you come up with ideas and then the ideas do or don't get implemented, but there's no track back to what metric actually moved for people, you know, and at what cost. And I feel like that's what makes it hard sometimes. And I think Anne has a question on this, but we'll come back to it at the end, to evaluate the merit of the idea. Like, it all sounds good. The child tax credit sounds good. The homeless fund sounds good, but that it's all spend. And you mentioned a little bit that cut the defense budget, but actually, as I look at some of the defense budget items, there's some really good stuff that's being spent there. So
Yeah.
I would just love a business plan from the Senate that says, here's what we're doing. And if Democrats have a different one and Republicans have a different one, that's fine. But it all tracks back to the same money, which happens to be ours. So I would like to see that. Barbara, the other thing that I wanted to ask you about, a very small question, is on Gaza. What besides a ceasefire, which you've been very vocal about from the beginning, would you do to ensure the security of Israel and Palestine, fight hate crimes, minimize further loss of life, and create a viable path for long-term coexistence of Israel and Palestine? Because
Sure.
I know ceasefire, but I'm really looking for, like, what else?
Sure. And yesterday I met with King Abdullah, from Jordan, and we talked a lot about what next. Of course, security for the state of Israel is paramount. I condemn the Hamas attacks. Hamas is a terrorist organization and, should not exist. And there's no way, and I've been to the Middle East. I chaired the committee when we were in the majority that provided a lot of the investments, both for the Palestinian Authority and also in terms of Israel's MOU. And so we have to make sure that we have a pathway to a diplomatic solution, a political solution that will lead to, I still support a two-state solution. What is taking place now is counterproductive to Israel's security, Lexi, because what is taking place now is not going to eliminate Hamas, it's creating more anger and more Hamas sympathizers. And so for Israel's security in itself, this is counterproductive. And the release of the hostages, killing 25,000, 30,000 innocent civilians is not going to get the hostages released. It's not productive it's counterproductive to Israel's security. So what we have to do, and when I talked with King Abdullah, it's scary right now because Ramadan is coming up, and we must get to a permanent ceasefire. We have to, secondly, bring in and make sure that the U.S. leads in making sure that the Arab world, the nations in the Middle East, come together and reassure Israel or assure Israel of its security by coming together as a group in the Arab world with the United States as part of this process and keep this war from escalating, because you see now that it is escalating and the United States is more embroiled in it than most people even know. And so we have to put a halt to this immediately so that the hostages can be released and so that we can come to a diplomatic and peaceful solution. Because what is taking place is not in Israel's security interest. And again, I know the region very well, and I know Hamas is not reflective of the Palestinian people, but I also know with 25 to 30,000 people dying that this is not going to eliminate Hamas.
Okay, so basically to say, I was sort of asking for what else, and you're sort of like this is like alcoholism and having a dual diagnosis of alcoholism and other things. You can't treat the other things until you treat the core disease, and you're saying until and unless we have a ceasefire, we can do nothing else. We'll get no hostages, there will be no peace treaties. Like that has to be the first order of business, and everything else you figure out after that. Is that
well? You've got to have a look. The humanitarian catastrophe is very clear, and there's some real humanitarian needs that need to be part of this, Lexi. And yes, I asked my friends, do you really believe that this war is going to eliminate Hamas, and will the war ensure that the hostages are released? And I believe firmly that we have to have a ceasefire, because we have to get to, unless you believe that the war will end up in what next after the war ends, that we don't need that the Middle East does not need a political and diplomatic solution. And the only way, if you believe that, then in fact, you have to have a path to that. And right now, there's no path. Okay.
All right, Christina, I'm sure you're chomping to address that. And this is all good edits for the next Lex Get Real, but I want to turn the attention to, again, these are questions that I know are burning for each of you, so I've selected them accordingly. I created this job posting for Senator. You oversee our budget, you pass laws, you try impeachment. You could impeach a Supreme Court justice, say Clarence Thomas, who's breached every ethical standard that we could ever have. And you could declare war, and we may be on the brink of two. And I think we hire for all the wrong reasons: name recognition, likability, maybe whether you're good looking or not, when we should be hiring for operating experience and systems thinking and financial fluency, empathy, and role-related specifics. Like, I really had to go back to school on what are the levers that the Senate actually can and can't press versus the executive branch versus Congress. For you, you definitely don't need to have been a congressperson to be a senator, but what in your background would help give people confidence in your finance experience, negotiating, getting things done in complex systems?
I mean, I've spent my entire career analyzing a lot of the main issues that we need to understand as senators, whether it's the border, the economy, mental health. I have that personal experience that I talked about earlier in this Zoom. Having extensively traveled abroad and covered a lot of these conflicts, whether it's been the Middle East or Haiti or Ukraine, or the philanthropic work I've done, a big part of my life, I've spent time with the Children of War Foundation. I'm on the board, and we go into conflict zones and we deliver life-saving medical care for children who are in need, whose life is at risk. So I've sat down also with Palestinian children. I was the only Senate candidate to go to Israel after October 7th. And I understand the nuances and complexity of the issues, and, you know, both from a international and domestic perspective. And I think that lived field experience is something that's missing with a lot of our electeds, frankly. And so that to me makes me uniquely qualified for this position. I've done dozens of investigations on any given topic, and I'm wildly passionate about people and helping people. And I've worked with homeless families and foster youth and communities in need. So I've seen all of those things firsthand. And it's the type of experience, of breadth and depth of experience, that I think is hard to come by. Okay.
Great. I have a question for you guys in the interest of time that I'll save, which is going to be yes or no on term limits for the Congress and Supreme Court public financing of campaigns and filibuster. You guys knew that was coming, but I want to take any questions from the audience, Trish, that we may have gotten that I missed.
Perfect. I am going to call on Katie Evans-Reber. Come off mute, Katie.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank Lexi for hosting this, and want to thank the candidates for taking time out of your day. Obviously, you're so busy to talk to us. You know, one thing that I want to ask you about, politics is really all about relationships. And if you were interviewing for a leadership role at a startup where I was the chief people officer, which is what my career background is, I would ask you the same question. What makes you qualified to be a leader? What are your leadership values? And more importantly, in my question, how are you going to influence the people around you as freshman senators to agree with what you're telling us that you want to do today?
Christina, how about you first?
Sure. I think one of the most important things you can do as a leader is listen. And not enough of that is done today. It's listening and understanding the needs of people, making them feel seen and heard, and truly understand their fears. And to me, that's been really a privilege of my work that I've done as a journalist, and I think is extremely important as a leader. In terms of getting people to agree with you, right now we're talking at each other. We're kind of in this us versus them mentality. And I think it's really important to approach people with an open mind, with, you know, not coming at them like you want to fight, but like you're going toward a common goal together. And that's really important. And also understanding where they're coming from and what their values are. And that's at least a good start.
Great. Great question, Katie. And Barbara, to you.
Yeah, thinking about being an African-American woman in a body that has only had 3 African-American women since it first went into session in 1789, serving a total of 10 years. It's a unique space in terms of representation. And so the authority that I would bring into the United States Senate, first of all, is the perspective and the lens of a person that has not been in the United States Senate except for 10 years. And Black women have specific experiences and abilities because of who we are in America. And so talking to people, for instance, when I worked on the Global AIDS Initiative, I was against George Bush, President Bush, on every single policy. I voted against him and the authorization to use force. I was the only one. But you know what? I went to him and said, people are dying of HIV and AIDS. He signed my bill, the Global AIDS Fund, PEPFAR. We've saved 25 million lives. And he didn't know me that well. I didn't know him that well. He knew I was opposed to him. I knew, and I knew I was opposed to him. And so we worked together though. And to this day, we've saved, again, 25 million lives. So it's about, yes, relationships, but it's also about respect. And in the United States Senate, I can tell you some stories. I can convince you, because you don't have this experience that the Senate has never had, except for 10 years. And so please listen to me, Mr. Whomever, Senator whomever, because I bring that authority and that cachet to the Senate. And of course, my background again is psychiatric social work. I'm a psychotherapist by profession. I have my MSW, and so listening, like Christina said, is extremely important. And I tend to listen to find common ground. And you would not believe the Republicans, even today, the MAGAs that I work with, because I listen and find common ground when I think I can do something for the people of California, the people of my district. So that's an important data point I think that we all have to have, because so many members of Congress, House and Senate, like to talk all the time, which is good. Debate is fine. But there comes a time when you have to fight for what is right. But there's also a time when you have to listen so that you can get the job done with bringing people together.
Barbara, thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure people saw the senator that AI would elect. This is, if you say who is going to be California's next senator in Mid-Journey, this is who you get. And it's pretty representative of past is what learning models are built on. And I just think it's like a small kind of funny example, except the lived experience of people who are in the Senate and their backgrounds professionally and socially really influence what their ability is to influence these technologies that are changing everything around us. If permission to go over just one probably 5-minute stint, and if you have to drop, please do, but I did say that I would ask you guys for a thumbs up on, and I'm just showing you the 4 questions and then I'll repeat them. So I'm gonna ask you to just thumbs up or thumbs down and on screen. Term limits for House and Senate members of 12 years. Term limits of 18 years for the Supreme Court starting in 8 years. The reason starting in 8 years is to avoid the perception of political maneuvering in support of one party or the other. Public financing for campaigns, including ending corporate contributions and super PACs, and ending the filibuster. So this is just a thumbs up or a thumbs down first, and you can both do it at once. Term limits for House and Senate of 12 years. Christina, I can't see yours. Your thumbs up? Okay. Barbara's thumbs down. Supreme Court, thumbs up, thumbs up. What was my next one? Oh, public finance for campaigns, ending corporate and super PAC contributions to campaigns and supporting a public option. Thumbs up. And finally, ending the filibuster. Oh, okay, sort of half and half. Okay, those are just sort of table stakes for the folks that have been supporting me. So I thank you for your honesty and where you guys are landing on those. I'm not going to ask you a follow-up because I want to be respectful of time. I was going to ask you, audience, to share. But let's now say, Barbara, what's one thing the audience, you would recommend for the audience to either read, watch, or listen to?
It's a book, it's a classic, The Miseducation of the American Negro by Carter G. Woodson.
Okay, Trish, will you put that with a link to it in the chat?
I can do that.
Okay, thanks. Christina.
Well, everything that I'm watching right now and reading is largely a birthing video or a mom-to-be book, so I don't recommend that for this audience. But I alternate between that and right now I'm reading a good book called Why Nations Fail, The Origins of Power, Prosperity, and Poverty. Super interesting.
Okay, who wrote it?
Darren Asimoglu.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, thank you. I think I would say On Tyranny by Tim Snyder, if you haven't read it, is really amazing. Audience, how you can help these candidates. It's not for me to decide, it's for you. You've just heard them. I got a note from Katie's team. We will reschedule with her at another time. How you can help Christina and Barbara, I'll do it for you guys. You can tell me if you want any other help. You can give to their campaigns. You can amplify their message on social, stump for them by hosting an event. And by the way, if any one of your friends ever runs for something and you want to help them, host an event, get people there, take lots of pictures, get it on social, and get people to give money. It's basically a cost of acquisition issue. You need money to acquire voters, and if you don't come from Congress, your cost of acquisition is much higher than if you do. And finally, get informed and vote. I am spending 20% of my time writing on Substack, lexireese.substack.com, doing this new talk show and amplifying what I think are really important kernels of truth, or truth, my observations about what's important for people to co-create a democracy that we're proud of. I'll always begin with a song from California and end with some art from California. Thank you for being with us. This is an art piece by Ed Ruscha, and the quote, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced." I want to give a special thank you. Barbara, you were the first person to actually say hello to me on the campaign trail. You were the only member of the Democratic leadership to this day who has reached out to talk to me or to create any sort of bridge or partnership. And for that, I will always remember you and be grateful. And to Christina, at this stage in my pregnancy, I was just being a bitch to Corby. So I don't know what you're doing, excuse my French, but I was just eating a lot and I've never done a dish since. Thank you to my husband. But God bless that you're doing this. And to everybody who tuned in, thank you for coming to the first episode of what I hope will be a series of Let's Get Real, conversations about people, planet, democracy, and co-creating a world we are proud of. We are out. Thank you to the candidates.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lexi.
Thank you, Lexi.
Appreciate you,
Barbara.
Lexi.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you. Good luck,
Appreciate you.
everybody.
Good luck,
Thank you.
everybody.
Yes.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trish, you are the best. Jigna,
Trish,
I know, how lucky. Katie, I was
my
like,
gosh.
who can operate Zoom?
I mean, Trish, right? Lex, say hi to Cash.